I swear I didn't mean for it to happen like that, but one careless sip of water basically changed my entire high school life, and maybe even my future, because that was the exact moment Sophia Carter, the school's untouchable princess, decided I was some kind of creepy stalker in love with her, and no matter how much I tried to explain, she refused to believe otherwise. It started on a scorching summer afternoon at Westbridge High School, where the air inside the classroom was as suffocating as the homework piling up on my desk. I was dying of thirst because my cheap water bottle had gone missing again, probably stolen or just rolled under someone's chair, and then right there in my hand was a half-finished bottle of Evian that Sophia had carelessly tossed aside like it was worth nothing. $2 for a bottle of water might not be a big deal for her, but for me, Ethan Reed, the broke kid from Riverside Town who had to scrape pennies just to buy draft paper, it was practically a luxury. I hesitated for maybe 3 seconds, my throat burning, before tilting the bottle into my mouth, careful not to actually touch where her lips had been, telling myself it was fine because it wasn't like she was going to drink it again anyway. The water was still cool, running down my throat, when I suddenly felt her shadow fall over me. I froze, bottle halfway up, as Sophia walked through the back door of the classroom, her honey-colored hair catching the light, her hazel eyes narrowing as they locked onto the exact bottle in my hand. Her expression flickered from confusion to shock to something far too amused, and then she sauntered over like a predator who had just spotted its prey. She grabbed my chin with slender fingers, tilted my face up, and with a playful smirk that was equal parts cruel and intoxicating, whispered, "What's this? Drinking my water? Ethan, don't tell me you're secretly in love with me." My entire face went up in flames. I wanted to dig a hole and bury myself alive because I could already imagine the whispers, the mocking laughter, the way every single classmate would look at me like I was a freak. She leaned in close, her voice ringing like silver bells, soft and mocking, and for a second I thought my heart was going to explode. I opened my mouth to deny it, to say the truth that I was just thirsty, that I wasn't some creep, but my voice died in my throat, and the only thing that came out was silence. Sophia's eyes gleamed with triumph, like she had just won some unspoken game, and before I could react, she laughed and brushed her lips against mine in a feather-light kiss. "I prefer mouth to mouth," she whispered with a mischievous glint, leaving me paralyzed against my desk, limbs shaking, mind reeling. That was the beginning of the nightmare. From that day on, Sophia Carter decided I was her personal entertainment. She'd follow me into the cafeteria, hover behind me while I picked food, whispering in my ear which dishes I should put on her tray even though she was literally standing right there and could have done it herself. "My hands are too precious to touch greasy trays," she'd say with a mock-serious face, and I'd have to bite my tongue not to snap back. If the teacher asked me to move test papers from one building to another, she'd trail after me claiming she had to monitor me in case I tried something shady with her exam. She was lazy to the point of insanity, the kind of girl who could fall asleep in the middle of class with her face resting serenely on her folded arms, yet when she sat at the Go Clubs board, she transformed into a sharp strategist no one could beat. The contrast was maddening. And then there was the debt, the reason I couldn't just tell her to shove it. On the very first night we got seated together, I had accidentally knocked her pen onto the floor, the nib smashing straight into the ground. I thought it was just a pen, until the kid behind us, Jake Collins, whistled and announced it was a limited edition worth several $1,000s. My stomach dropped through the floor. Sophia waved it off like it was nothing, saying she had plenty more at home, but the damage was done. For days I could barely sleep, calculating how long it would take my family to sell everything we owned to scrape together that kind of money. Finally, out of desperation, I offered to write her an IOU and pay her back over time. To my surprise, she didn't laugh in my face. Instead, she rested her cheek on her hand, twirled a brand new pen between her fingers, and said casually, "If you're going to pay me back, you might as well be useful. I need someone to fetch food from the cafeteria and buy water from the store. $10 a run. Interested?" I almost jumped at the offer. $10 a run meant I could start chipping away at the mountain of debt, no matter how slowly. And so I became Sophia Carter's errand boy. But the more I ran for her, the more I realized she wasn't just lazy, she was a genius at manipulating people. She knew exactly how to tilt her head, how to curl her lips in a smirk that made you feel like resisting her was pointless. And the worst part? Somewhere along the line, I started getting used to it. The late-night calls where she'd demand I quiz her on ancient poetry, the way her voice would drop into a drowsy murmur on the other end of the phone until I accidentally fell asleep mid-conversation, only to wake up and see hours-long call logs. The way she'd lean just a little too close, eyes sparkling with mischief, and call me, my little nerd, in front of everyone, making me want to crawl into the floor but also secretly making my heart race. It was insane. It was humiliating. And it was addictive. I told myself over and over again that I was only doing this to pay off my debt, that once the numbers were even, I'd cut ties and walk away. But Sophia didn't see it that way. To her, every step I took deeper into her orbit was just more proof that I was hopelessly, pathetically in love with her. And maybe, deep down, a part of me was starting to wonder if she was right. I never thought saying yes to Sophia Carter's birthday party would drag me into the kind of circus that would haunt me for weeks, but when you're the broke kid who owes the school princess a ridiculous amount of money, you don't exactly get to say no, especially not when she leans in during class with that lazy smile and whispers, "Ethan, you drank my water, remember? You owe me," like I had committed some crime punishable by social death. So I caved. Friday evening, instead of heading back to Riverside Town with Tommy Brooks and his dad's pickup truck, I found myself standing in front of the Carter family's luxury condo in Newport City, clutching a plastic bag from a corner bookstore. Inside was a study guide I picked out after wandering around in panic, because what the hell was I supposed to get a girl who already owned more jewelry than I'd ever see in my lifetime? Everyone else brought glossy packages with brand names stamped in gold lettering. My pathetic red bag looked like trash sitting among them, so I tried to hide it behind my leg until Sophia spotted me at the door. "You're late," she said, arching a brow, but then she reached out and plucked the bag from my hand before I could protest. She pulled out the book, read the title Physics Made Simple for Beginners and smirked, holding it up for everyone to see. See? My desk mate actually knows me. He gets me books because he knows I need to study. Not shallow gifts like some of you. Her words cut sharper than any knife. Half the room went silent, the other half shot daggers at me, especially Ryan Miller, the golden boy of Westbridge High. Ryan, who was born with money, looks, and brains, the guy who had always ranked just behind me in exams and hated my guts for it. He laughed too loud, slapping a hand on my shoulder as if we were buddies. "So, Ethan, what's it like being Sophia's little tutor? You must feel so proud." His tone dripped with sarcasm, and Sophia's eyes narrowed at him, but before she could clap back, someone suggested we play a game. Of course, it had to be truth or dare. And of course, fate had to screw me over by landing the spin of the bottle on me. "Truth or dare," someone shouted. My mind was still reeling from Ryan's jab, so I muttered, "Truth." But apparently the truth cards were gone, leaving only dares. A round-faced kid grinned and waved a slip of paper. "Then it's dare for you, Reed. You've got to play the paper-passing game." My stomach dropped. The paper-passing game, the one where you pass a folded slip from mouth to mouth until it reaches the last person. The entire room erupted in whistles and laughter. Sophia's eyes lit up instantly, her smile sharp, her gaze locked on me like a cat watching a mouse. She wanted me to pick her. Everyone did. And maybe if I had, things would have been simple, embarrassing, sure, but simple. But then I felt Ryan's glare burning into the side of my face, his arrogance radiating like a challenge. Something snapped inside me. Instead of Sophia, I turned, held the paper between my lips, and leaned toward Ryan. The room went silent, so quiet you could have heard a pin drop. Ryan's smug grin faltered into shock, then fury, and just as I leaned in, he kicked the leg of my chair. The chair tipped forward, my body lurched, and before I could stop it, my lips crashed into his. A dead hush fell across the party, followed by the loudest gasps I'd ever heard. Ryan's eyes widened in horror, mine probably mirrored his, and I scrambled back just as Sophia shot to her feet, her face stormy. In the next second, she grabbed me by the arm and dragged me out of the room, slamming the door behind us so hard the walls rattled. I barely had time to breathe before she shoved me against the hallway wall, her hazel eyes blazing with something between fury and jealousy. "Why him?" she demanded, her voice low, dangerous. "What's so special about Ryan that you'd rather do that dare with him instead of me?" I gaped at her, my mind blank. "It's not like that, don't lie to me," she snapped, her tone cracking just slightly, like underneath all that anger was something fragile. "Ethan, you're the one who drank my water, who wrote me notes, who stayed on the phone with me till midnight. You were the one who started this. You'd better not tell me now that you'd rather chase after someone else." My chest tightened. I wanted to say it was a misunderstanding, that I didn't choose Ryan because I liked him, that I was just tired of being toyed with. But the words got stuck in my throat, and instead, I muttered something about focusing on studies. Her expression faltered, just a flicker of hurt crossing her features before she masked it with a bitter smile. "Fine. Then let's make it about studies. If I beat you by 100 places in the next exam, you'll call me sister and give me whatever birthday gift I want. Deal?" She said it like a challenge, daring me to refuse. I knew it was impossible no one from a regular class ever broke into the top ranks dominated by rocket class students. But I couldn't bear to crush her determination. So I nodded. "Fine." Her eyes lit up, but she covered it with a smug smirk, leaning closer until I could feel her breath on my skin. "Don't underestimate me, Ethan. You think you've got me figured out, but you don't. I'll prove it." And then, as if the night hadn't humiliated me enough, the elevator dinged open at the end of the hallway. A tall man in a suit stood there, briefcase in hand, staring at us. Sophia froze. The man's face broke into a slow grin, and with a thumbs up, he said, "That's my girl." My stomach plummeted to my shoes. That was Mr. Carter, her dad. By the time the elevator doors closed again, Sophia's ears were burning red, and I could barely look at her. We went back into the party, pretending nothing had happened, but the air was charged, and everyone stared at us like we were the hottest gossip in town. And just like that, the rumors began, that Ethan Reed and Sophia Carter were more than just desk mates, more than just tutor and student, more than just a broke kid and a princess from Newport City. And deep down, I knew nothing would ever be the same again. The week after Sophia Carter's birthday party felt like walking around with a target painted on my back, because every hallway I walked through, every classroom I sat in, I could feel eyes on me, whispering, laughing, making stupid comments about how the broke kid from Riverside town had somehow become the school princess's favorite toy. The rumor mill had gone into overdrive, and of course Ryan Miller fanned the flames, smirking whenever we crossed paths, reminding me that he wasn't done with me after the humiliation of that dare gone wrong. But all of that background noise didn't matter, not really, because the monthly exams were coming, and for me, grades weren't just numbers on a sheet, they were survival, proof that I was more than the debts and shame weighing me down. I studied like my life depended on it, because in a way, it did. And yet, even in those tense days, Sophia wouldn't leave me alone. She still dragged me to late-night study calls, still shoved her messy notes at me, still demanded I quiz her on everything from poetry to physics. She'd grin and say, "Relax, Ethan, I'll crush this test. Just wait and see." I'd roll my eyes, because come on, this was Sophia Carter. We were talking about the girl who fell asleep halfway through history class and once claimed she chose multiple choice answers by the length of the options. But when exam day arrived, something felt different. The test was brutal, the kind that made even the rocket class students frown. Still, I managed to work through it steadily, grinding down every question, until I hit the last Pagea hidden bonus problem printed on the back. It was ridiculously hard, but I recognized the pattern from a past paper I'd reviewed late one night. My hand flew across the page, scribbling the solution, and when the bell rang, I leaned back with a shaky breath. Outside the classroom, Ryan was already bragging loudly. "Too easy," he scoffed, his voice carrying across the hall. "Finished everything." I raised a brow. "Even the bonus problem?" His face darkened instantly. "Bonus problem? What bonus problem?" That was when I realized he hadn't flipped to the back page. His glare could have burned holes through me, and I knew then and there he was going to lose his mind if I ranked higher than him again. A few days later, the results came out, and for the first time in my life, I felt a surge of pride. 3rd place. Not third in class, third in the entire school. My highest rank yet. I couldn't wait to breathe, to finally feel like all the sleepless nights had paid off. But when I scanned the list again, my stomach lurched. Because first place wasn't a rocket class student, and it wasn't Ryan Miller. It was Sophia Carter. I stared at her name, blinking like maybe my eyes were playing tricks. The girl who once tried to argue that 2 by 2 was 5 if you looked at it differently, had somehow vaulted from near the bottom to the very top. And if that wasn't shocking enough, the entire school found out in the most dramatic way possible. During the assembly, the Dean of Academics announced her name into the microphone, his voice ringing across the field. "Congratulations to Sophia Carter of Class 1, who has achieved first place in this monthly exam." The entire student body erupted in chaos. Gasps, mutters, laughter, nobody believed it. Then Sophia, tall and slender even in the shapeless school uniform, walked up to the stage, her long legs carrying her with the kind of confidence that made it feel like she owned the place. Even from the crowd, I could see the small beauty mark under her left eye, catching the sunlight. She paused at the podium, looked out at the sea of students, and then, with a deceptively innocent smile, dropped a bombshell. "Some people said I must have cheated. That I couldn't possibly go from where I was to first place honestly." The entire field went dead silent. My pulse thudded. What the hell was she doing? Then she tilted her head, smile sharpening. "You're right. I did cheat. I had a cheat code no one else had." Gasps ripped through the crowd. Teachers shifted uncomfortably, the dean's face turning purple, ready to cut her mic. But Sophia didn't flinch. She lifted her chin, her voice clear and steady. "My cheat code's name is Ethan Reed. He's my desk mate. He's the one who explained every question I didn't understand. He made me a set of notes so detailed that when I walked into that exam hall, I recognized every single concept on the page. If you call that cheating, then yes, I cheated, and I don't regret it." My knees nearly buckled. Hundreds of eyes turned to me, whispers surging like waves, and I wanted to disappear into the ground. Sophia, meanwhile, looked radiant, her smile softening as she added, "When I was lost, Ethan's notes were the light that showed me the way. So if you're going to blame anyone for my rank, blame him for being too good of a teacher." The crowd exploded. Some kids cheered, some booed, some laughed. Jake Collins practically tackled me from behind, shaking me like I was a lottery winner. "Bro. What the hell, you've been tutoring Sophia Carter. No wonder she's so into you." I shoved him off, my face burning so hot it hurt. On stage, Sophia wasn't done. In fact, she continued sweetly, ignoring the dean's frantic hand signals, "I don't want to keep this resource all to myself. If anyone wants Ethan's notes, come talk to me. I'll print copies for you. Not for free, of course. You want quality, you pay for it. Half off if you're from Westbridge." The field dissolved into chaos, kids laughing, shouting offers, teachers fuming. The dean finally stormed up and yanked the mic away, but the damage was done. Sophia Carter had turned the entire school upside down in less than 5 minutes, and in the middle of it all, she'd pointed straight at me as her cheat code. From that day forward, I wasn't just Ethan Reed, the broke kid who studied too hard. I was the guy Sophia Carter had chosen to put in the spotlight, the guy tied to her name whether I wanted it or not. And as much as I wanted to crawl under a rock, a traitorous part of me couldn't forget the way she'd look down from the stage, her eyes finding mine in the crowd, her lips curving into a private smile as if to say, "I told you I'd prove it." After Sophia Carter's little performance on stage, the entire school was turned upside down and my life was no longer just mine, because suddenly I wasn't just Ethan Reed, the broke kid from Riverside Town who quietly studied his way into the top ranks. I was the cheat code Sophia had announced to the world like some exclusive hack only she owned, and everyone wanted a piece of it. Classmates from other sections started showing up at my desk asking if I could share my notes, and when I told them no, they went straight to Sophia, who had already set up shop like she was running her own underground empire, turning my painstakingly organized study guides into bound booklets that she sold like hotcakes. And of course she never asked me if she could, she just smiled and said, "Relax Ethan, you should be grateful I'm helping you build your brand." As if I wanted a brand at all, while I sat there feeling like my dignity was being sold off one photocopy at a time. Meanwhile teachers were furious. The dean nearly had a heart attack, but what could they do? Sophia was untouchable. She was the Carter family's only daughter. Her dad was a big shot in Newport City and her mom had enough influence to make any complaint disappear. So while they lectured us in private, they never actually punished her, and Sophia just leaned back in her chair twirling her pen like none of it mattered, whispering, "See Ethan, I told you I'd prove it to everyone." While I wanted to crawl into a hole and never come out, the worst part was how people looked at me now, some in awe, some in jealousy, some in disgust. Ryan Miller especially, his face when the rankings came out was something I'll never forget. Second place had been his entire identity for years, always right behind me, always smug enough to believe he'd get ahead eventually. But now Sophia had leapfrogged both of us, and in front of the entire school she'd credited me for it. It was like I'd slapped him across the face without lifting a finger. His glares grew sharper, his words meaner, and one afternoon he cornered me by the lockers sneering, "Enjoy it while it lasts, Reed, because next time I'll take you down, and when I do we'll see if your little princess still worships you." I didn't even respond because honestly I didn't have the energy to feed his ego, but inside I felt that unease twisting tighter every day. The truth was I was barely holding it together between schoolwork, part-time tutoring gigs, and the constant reminder of my family's debts. I was already stretched thin, and now Sophia had tied my name to hers in front of everyone, which meant I couldn't move without people making assumptions like we were some official couple, when in reality I couldn't even admit to myself how I felt about her. Part of me liked the way she said, "My cheat code," with that smug little smile like I was hers and hers alone, but another part of me hated how powerless I felt around her, hated how she could play with my reputation and my future like it was just another one of her games. But no matter how conflicted I was, Sophia didn't slow down. In fact, she doubled down, spending more time with me than ever. Sometimes she'd drag me into empty classrooms after school, tossing her hair over her shoulder and demanding I explain quadratic functions for the 10th time, even though I was pretty sure she already understood them. Other times she'd call me past midnight, her voice low and lazy through the speaker, asking me to test her on poetry until I fell asleep listening to her recite verse after verse as if her words were seeping into my dreams. And every time I told myself I was just doing this to pay off the debt, to clear the slate and walk away, but my heart wouldn't listen and I hated that I couldn't control it. Then came the announcement from Mr. Dawson, our math teacher, that changed everything. He pulled me aside after class one day with Ryan lurking nearby and told us both the school had 2 slots for a regional math training camp hosted by Stanford Prep, a program so intense it could guarantee recommendation letters and maybe even scholarships if we performed well. He wanted us both to go. "It's a great opportunity, Ethan," he said kindly, "but it will cost about $2,000 for food, housing and travel, even though the school will cover part of it." $2,000 might as well have been $2 million for me. I forced a smile, told him I'd think about it, and went home to my tiny rented room, staring at the cracked ceiling, wondering why life loved to kick me when I was already down. I called my parents, hoping against hope they'd say yes just this once, but my father only scoffed. 2,000? We don't even have 200. Stop dreaming, Ethan. Then he hung up like the conversation was a waste of his time. My chest felt like it had been hollowed out, but I wasn't even surprised. This wasn't the first time my family had killed a chance for me. Back in middle school I'd been picked for a speech contest, but when they found out the costume fee was $140 they refused, and my teacher had to pay out of pocket so I could go, and that memory came back sharp and bitter, reminding me Exactly where I stood in their priorities. I tried to borrow money from relatives, but my aunt's husband slammed the door in my face saying my parents still owed them $3,000 from years ago. Friends couldn't help either, most of them were broke like me. I thought about asking Sophia, but my pride screamed no, because if she saw me beg for money she'd never let me live it down, she'd hold it over me forever. So I gave up, or at least I thought I did. Until the morning of the trip, Mr. Dawson called me in. A panic. Ethan, why aren't you at the bus yet? Didn't Ryan already cover your fee? My heart nearly stopped. Ryan had paid for me. My brain couldn't process it, but I ran to school anyway, arriving at the bus just in time to see him lounging by the window, arms crossed like a king holding court. When I sat beside him still panting, he didn't even look at me, just muttered, "Don't thank me, I didn't do it for you, I just want to see what it's like to make the great Ethan Reed my servant for 2 weeks." I wanted to be angry, but instead I just nodded quietly, because $2,000 was $2,000, and no matter how humiliating it felt, I couldn't walk away from the chance this camp represented. During the bus ride he kept sneaking glances at me, making snide remarks about how pathetic it was that I couldn't even pay my own way, and how I must have no pride left since I was letting him foot the bill. But all I did was stare out the window, pretending not to hear, because deep down I knew he was right. In his eyes I was nothing but a charity case, a joke, someone to mock and push around, and the worst part was I couldn't even argue back, because without his money I wouldn't even be on that bus to begin with. The camp itself was brutal, days packed with advanced lectures, nights filled with problem sets that made my head spin, but I pushed through every single one, while Ryan wasted half his energy making me fetch him snacks or run errands just to prove he could boss me around. Our roommates tried to tell him to chill, but he only laughed and said, "He likes it, he lives for this, he's nothing without serving someone richer than him." And maybe they believed him, maybe they looked at me the way everyone else did, like I was less than them, like my only worth was in being useful. But I didn't care. All I wanted was to prove myself on that final exam, to show everyone that Ethan Reed wasn't just Sophia Carter's cheat code or Ryan Miller's errand boy, that I could stand on my own and win. That was the only thing that kept me moving. And yet even then, even in the middle of all that chaos, Sophia still found her way back into my orbit. Late at night after study sessions I'd check my phone and there'd be a message from her, simple things like, "Have you eaten?" or "Don't stay up too late, nerd." Sometimes she'd even call and I'd hear her lazy voice teasing, "Don't forget, Ethan, you promised if I broke into the top ranks you'd call me sister." And it made my chest ache, because no matter how much I told myself she was just playing games, part of me desperately wanted to believe she meant it. Part of me wanted to believe I was more to her than just entertainment, and as much as I hated to admit it, that part of me kept me going long after my body wanted to give up. After Sophia Carter called me her cheat code in front of the entire school, my life stopped belonging to me and turned into public property, because suddenly I wasn't just Ethan Reed from Riverside Town, the broke kid who quietly kept his head down. I was that guy, the one Sophia pointed at with her lazy grin, the one who had apparently carried her from dead last to first place overnight. And it felt like every hallway I walked through was lined with whispers, some admiring, some jealous, most mocking. And the worst part was that Sophia didn't even seem to care about the chaos she'd unleashed. In fact, she leaned into it, capitalizing on it like only she could, because a day later she was already handing out printed copies of my notes like some kind of black market queen pin, charging kids a fee for every set she delivered. And when I asked her what the hell she was doing, she tilted her head with that infuriating smile and said, "Relax, Ethan, you should thank me, I'm turning your brain into a business model." As if she was my manager and I had somehow signed up for this brand deal I never wanted. Meanwhile the teachers were furious. The dean nearly popped a vein during morning announcements, but what could they do? She was Sophia Carter, daughter of one of the most powerful families in Newport City, untouchable no matter how outrageous she got, so they could only wag their fingers and warn us in private, while she smirked and leaned back in her chair looking like trouble, dressed in a school uniform, and whispered, "See, Ethan told you I'd prove it to everyone." While my face burned hotter than the sun, the attention also painted a bigger target on my back, because Ryan Miller was livid. Second place had been his whole identity, and now Sophia had leapfrogged both of us, giving me all the credit and making him look like a clown. And he wasn't going to take that lying down. Every time we crossed paths he'd make some comment about me being Sophia's pet or her charity project, and one afternoon he slammed his locker shut in my face and snarled, "Enjoy it while it lasts, Reed, next time I'll crush you, and when I do, let's see if your little princess still worships you." I wanted to punch him, but I bit my tongue, because the truth was I was already drowning in pressure between classes, tutoring jobs, and the constant reminder of debts waiting at home. I didn't have room for another fight, but I couldn't ignore the storm brewing around me either, because even as I tried to keep my distance, Sophia only pulled me closer, dragging me into late-night study calls, making me recite formulas to her over the phone until I fell asleep listening to her lazy voice teasing in my ear, and every time I told myself I was just doing this to work off the debt, but my heart wouldn't listen. Then one day Mr. Dawson pulled me aside after class, Ryan standing right there like he owned the room, and told us the school had secured 2 slots at a regional math training camp hosted by Stanford Prep, the kind of program that could guarantee college recommendations, maybe even scholarships if we did well. It's a great opportunity, Ethan, he said, but it'll cost about $2,000 even with the school covering part of it. $2,000 might as well have been $2 million. I forced a nod, said I'd think about it, and spent the night staring at the ceiling of my rented room feeling like the world was laughing at me. I called my parents praying maybe this time they'd back me up, but my father scoffed. 2,000? We don't even have 200. Stop daydreaming. And hung up like my future wasn't worth the conversation. I tried relatives, but my uncle slammed the door in my face, still bitter about some money my parents owed him years ago. Friends couldn't help either, most of them couldn't scrape together more than 100, and the thought of asking Sophia made my pride shrivel, because if she saw me begging she'd never let me live it down. So I decided I'd skip it. I'd accept that some doors just weren't meant to open for kids like me. But the morning of departure I woke to Mr. Dawson's call. Ethan, why aren't you at the bus yet? Ryan said he already paid your fee. I froze. Ryan paid for me? My brain short-circuited, but I sprinted to school anyway, barely catching the bus, and when I sat beside him breathless he didn't even look at me, just muttered, "Don't thank me, I didn't do it for you, I just want to see what it's like to make the great Ethan Reed my servant for 2 weeks. His smirk said it all to him. I wasn't a rival, I was a project, an experiment, a toy, and I hated that. Part of me was relieved, because without his money I wouldn't even be there. The camp was brutal, long days crammed with advanced lectures, nights filled with problem sets that felt impossible, but I clawed my way through every single one. Ryan meanwhile spent half his energy bossing me around, making me fetch snacks, run errands, polish his image, as if proving I was beneath him would somehow fix the whole. Sophia had punched in his pride. Our roommates tried to step in, telling him to knock it off, but he just laughed. He doesn't mind, do you, Reed? He lives for this, he's nothing without someone richer to serve. And maybe they believed him, maybe everyone did, because that's how it looked, a broke kid carrying the baggage of someone with money. But I didn't care, I let them think whatever they wanted, because I wasn't there for Ryan or Sophia or anyone else. I was there for that final test, the one that could open doors, scholarships, futures I'd never dreamed of. And still, even in that suffocating environment, Sophia found a way to reach me, texting late at night, sometimes calling, teasing me with, "Don't forget, Ethan, you promised to call me sister if I made it to the top." And my chest tightened because I knew she was playing, but part of me wanted to believe she wasn't. Part of me wanted to believe I was more to her than just entertainment, and it was that part, the foolish, reckless part, that kept me grinding even when my body begged me to quit, because maybe, just maybe, if I proved myself here, if I beat Ryan and stood on my own 2 feet, I'd finally be able to look Sophia Carter in the eye, not as her errand boy, not as her cheat code, but as someone worthy of standing beside her. The training camp felt like a pressure cooker, the kind where every mistake hissed like steam, threatening to blow the lid off, and I was doing everything I could to keep my head down, focus on the lectures, and grind through the endless stacks of problems. But life never lets me just focus, because halfway through the second week Ryan Miller's body gave up on him. The guy who strutted around like he was invincible, suddenly burning up with a fever so high he couldn't even string 2 words together. And the worst part was that we were in a dorm out in the middle of nowhere, with no teachers awake and no medical staff in sight. So when I found him thrashing on his bed, drenched in sweat, whispering broken words about his dad, I had to make a choice: leave him to his pride or step in and do something I hated. That my heart overruled my head, but I grabbed him, slung his arm over my shoulder, and dragged him through the hallway, pounding on doors until a half-asleep dorm manager called a cab and we rushed him to the nearest clinic. It was 2 a.m. and I was running on fumes, but I stayed there beside his bed, watching the 4 drip into his arm while he cried in his sleep like a little kid, muttering, "Dad, don't go," over and over. And I realized for the first time that maybe all his arrogance was just armor covering a scar that went deeper than I knew. When dawn broke, I hadn't slept at all. My own head felt heavy and my body was shivering, but I brushed it off because I didn't want anyone to know I'd stayed the night watching over him. If Ryan remembered, it would probably humiliate him, and if he didn't, that was even better. I just wanted to move on, but my body had other plans, because by the time the big mock exam rolled around I was the one running a fever, my legs like lead, my hands trembling on the pen, and of course fate had to make the final problem one of those nightmare-level questions, the kind that separates the champions from the rest. Normally I'd eat that kind of problem alive, but This time the room spun every time I looked down at the page, and for the first time in a long time I thought I might actually lose, but then I remembered Sophia, her voice over the phone saying if I ever dared to lose she'd walk 10 steps toward me for every step I took away, and something inside me refused to give, and I dug into every bit of muscle memory, every late night session, every page of notes I'd written, until the solution came together on the page by sheer willpower. When it was over I collapsed at my desk, not even caring who saw, and the next thing I knew I was waking up in the infirmary with Ryan standing over me, his face twisted in that same complicated mix of contempt and gratitude. "Don't think saving me means you get to back out of our bet," he muttered, his voice low so no one else would hear. I said whoever ranked lower would walk away from Sophia, and I don't break my word. I almost laughed, because even then, even after I'd nearly killed myself grinding through that exam, all he cared about was winning or losing over a girl who hadn't even been asked what she wanted. But I didn't argue, I just looked him in the eye and said, "Then I guess you'd better hope you didn't lose." Because deep down I knew I hadn't. When the results came back a week later, the camp buzzed with whispers, because out of hundreds of students from across the state only one name stood at the very top: Ethan Reed. I'd done it first place even while sick, and Ryan came in second, again his knuckles white around his score sheet as he shoved it into his bag. Without a word later he found me outside alone, the air cool against my fevered skin, and he said through clenched teeth, "I'll keep my promise, I'll stay away from her, but don't get too comfortable, Reed, because one day I will beat you." And for once his words didn't sting, they just rolled off me like water, because the truth was I wasn't fighting for him, I was fighting for myself, for the chance to breathe without debts chaining me down. But when I got back to my room, Sophia was waiting on video call, her face lighting up my cracked phone screen, her smile both smug and warm. "So you didn't let me down after all my cheat code?" she teased, and I should have been annoyed, but instead I felt that stupid rush in my chest, because all I wanted was to see her in person again, to tell her I wasn't just her cheat code, I was someone she could rely on, and someone who wanted to stand beside her, not behind her. The problem was I didn't know if I had the courage to say it yet. When the camp ended and the bus rolled back into Newport City, I thought I'd finally get a chance to breathe, maybe go back to being invisible for a while. But of course life had other plans, because Sophia Carter never let me stay invisible, not even for a day. She was waiting for me the moment I stepped off the bus, standing there in a cream sweater and jeans like she hadn't just turned the entire school upside down before I left. And when our eyes met, she didn't smile like usual, she frowned, a tiny line between her brows that told me she was pissed about something. I barely had time to drop my bag before she grabbed my wrist and pulled me aside, her nails cold against my skin. "You look like crap, Ethan," she said bluntly, scanning my face and the way I was swaying on my feet. "Did you think I wouldn't notice? You burned yourself out again." I tried to brush it off, told her it was nothing, just the tail end of a fever, but her expression darkened even more, and she pushed me back against the wall of the station, glaring at me with those sharp hazel eyes. "You idiot, do you even care about yourself? Or do you only care about chasing grades like some robot? What happens when you collapse for real, huh? Who's supposed to pick you back up?" My chest tightened, because I wanted to tell her the truth, that every grade, every score was the only weapon I had against the debts and the chains tying me down, that if I let go of that I had nothing. But the words stuck in my throat, and all I managed was a weak, "Sophia, I'm fine." But she didn't buy it, she never did. Instead she leaned closer, her voice softer but more dangerous. "Stop lying to me, Ethan. If you don't start caring about yourself, then don't expect me to care either." Then she let go and turned away, her hair swaying like she was walking out of my life for good. My instinct screamed at me not to let her go, so I called out the word I'd been too stubborn to use before. "Wait, sister." She froze dead in her tracks, and for a second I thought maybe I'd pushed too far, but when she turned back her cheeks were pink and her lips trembled like she was fighting a smile. "Do you even know what you just said?" she whispered. I swallowed hard and nodded. "I know exactly what I said. You wanted me to call you that if you beat me, and you did. But Sophia, it's not just about the bet anymore. I like you." My voice cracked, but I forced it out because I couldn't keep carrying it inside. Her eyes widened, and for once she didn't have a snarky comeback. She just stared at me in stunned silence. Then she walked back slowly, her hand brushing mine before she tugged me down so she could whisper in my ear, "Took you long enough to admit it, baby." And then she kissed me soft but sure, sealing it before I could second-guess myself again. My whole body went rigid, my mind screaming that this was insane, but my heart was louder, and for the first time in forever I didn't feel like a fraud. When she pulled back she smirked, "But don't think this means you're off the hook. You still owe me that mountain of debt, and I'll be keeping score." I laughed even though my throat was tight, because that was so her, turning even love into some kind of contract, and maybe that was exactly what I needed, someone who wouldn't let me forget my responsibilities but would also never let me run from what I felt from that day on. Things didn't magically get easier. Rumors still flew, Ryan still glared, and money was still short, but Sophia was there every step of the way, dragging me to the library, forcing me to eat when I skipped meals, calling me every night just to make sure I hadn't drowned in textbooks, and sometimes when no one was looking she'd squeeze my hand and whisper, "Don't forget Ethan, you're mine," like it was a promise. And a warning all at once. And maybe it was, but for the first time I didn't mind being claimed, because if being hers meant I didn't have to keep carrying everything alone, then I was fine with that. Years later, when graduation came and I walked across the stage, diploma in hand, I saw her in the crowd clapping louder than anyone, her smile bright enough to cut through every doubt I'd ever had, and I realized that somewhere along the way the debts and the shame had stopped defining me, because she'd forced me to see myself the way she did, not just as a cheat code, not just as a poor kid from Riverside Town, but as Ethan Reed, someone worth betting on. And as I stepped down from that stage, I promised myself one thing: the next time I stood in front of Sophia Carter, it wouldn't be as the boy who owed her everything, it would be as the man ready to give her the world.